Well, hello there. My name is Ian, and welcome to my YouTube channel. So once again, my guest is Jonathan Cornell from immersiveaudioalbum.com, writer and Atmos mixer extraordinaire. And go check out our video on how to create an Atmos mix, and you'll find out why. But today, we're going to talk about this new box set from The Doors and Rhino Records, and this is the appropriately titled Immersed box set. And this encapsulates all 6 of the Doors studio albums. No extras or outtakes, which is a shame because I would have liked to have had Celebration of the Lizard in Atmos. That would have been sick. And I also kind of wonder why they didn't do Absolutely Live. But we can kind of talk about that when we talk about the quad mixes. But yeah, so let's get right to it. So do you want to talk a little bit about our appreciation of the Doors in kind of a general sense, and then sort of merge into maybe the background, like different versions of multi-channel mixes, like going back to the quad mixes, the 5.1 and the Atmos?
Sure. So, we talked a little bit about this set sort of before we had heard it in our October preview video, which was, I guess we did that, like 2 months ago now?
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
So, as I said then, the Doors were one of my dad's favorite bands. So they're one of those bands where, like, I've got all the records. They're the kind of band where I want to hear, like, all the tracks. Like, I don't want just the greatest hits.
Yeah.
So, as we talked about, if you're a fan of surround and you're a fan of the Doors, you're lucky because you have a lot of options to choose from. So back in the 70s, there was a greatest hits compilation called The Best of the Doors, where they chose, I think, 11 or 12 tracks from across the catalog and remix those to quad. And it was released as a single inventory quad title. So it was like this particular Best of the Doors collection is only a quad LP. And that collection has been re-released in digital form twice. There was a Super Audio CD from Audio Fidelity that came out in 2015, which is long out of print. And then a couple of years later, Rhino put out this collection called Doors the Singles, which has a CD with all their singles, and then it has a Blu-ray with a different transfer, different mastering of the quad mix. So this is one option here. And then later on, we have the Perception box set, which came out in 2006. And that has the entire catalog, all 6 records that were remixed to 5.1 by Bruce Botnick, who was the original engineer on all these records.
Which is really interesting to me.
Yeah. And he was the producer on LA Woman.
Yes.
And amazing. He was 23 years old when he recorded the Doors' first album in 1966.
Wow.
It's just absolutely insane.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
That's incredible.
So in that collection, there are these 40th anniversary mixes, which are in stereo and 5.1. So there's also different stereo mixes on the Perception box. And then we move way ahead to 2022, when the entire catalog appeared again on streaming services in Atmos. And these were again done by Bruce Botnick. And just before this box set, last year, we had this expanded Best of the Doors single disc Blu-ray from Rhino, which collects 19 tracks in their new Atmos mixes, which at the time were only on streaming services. And it also has the 5.1 mixes from the Perception box, the 40th anniversary mixes. So I think when this came out, I was kind of thinking, like, well, they basically don't want to do like another Perception box. Like, this is kind of the best we're going to get, like, 19 tracks cherry picked from across the Atmos mixes. So I bought this, but had the Immersed box been available then, I probably would have gone for that over this. Because like I was saying, the Doors are one of those bands where I want to hear kind of the whole catalog.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of went back and forth when they announced the Immersed set. Because, like, I have all this other stuff. I've got enough Doors for one lifetime. But then I thought about it, and I was like, $80 for 6 albums. It's a pretty good deal.
It is.
There are some songs that aren't on this that I wanted to hear the full res Atmos versions of. But I think for you were telling me that you didn't have any Doors surround stuff before. So that in that case, that is a great deal.
No, so I'll just kind of briefly summarize my history with the Doors. So I first discovered them maybe off of, similarly to you, my dad's collection. My dad had the first album, which was, the original mix. It was the censored version. And then later, I think he bought the Best of the Doors, which was like a 2-disc collection. What always kind of drew me to this band was that, I'm a progressive rock fan, and I consider these guys to be like what we might call like a proto progressive band, because they were drawing from all these different influences, from like jazz and the blues. Here you have this beat poet singer, this very charismatic guy. And, we were kind of talking about this before, but that seems like an archetype that's repeated a few times. Like, everybody from Captain Beefheart to like Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, you have this like dark poet and kind of this bluesy rock band behind them. But I don't think anybody else was quite doing that before the Doors, but, and then while also assimilating all these styles, like cabaret music, doing like the whiskey bar thing like that. It's just so unique. And like Light My Fire, like that to me is a progressive rock track, because you're taking Bach, you're combining it with bossa nova, you've got the chord changes from My Favorite Things, and you got a little jam, and it's a 7-minute radio song. Like, that's just incredible to me for 1966. So I originally bought all the albums when I was in high school. And that would have been around the time that the original 5.1 mixes came out. So like 2006, 2007. So the versions of the albums that I heard first were remixes. I had never heard the original mixes until actually very recently. So I started my business, and I think I probably sold off most of my music collection. I thought, hey, I'm good with the Best of with the Doors. Flash forward to 2022, 2023, I get my first Atmos system, and I'm kind of cruising through streaming, and oh, look here, the complete Doors catalog is available on streaming. And that was kind of my way back into listening to them again. And so when this was announced, I got really excited, because it's like, oh, I love Atmos music, and these guys were like my first Atmos band in a way. And what I love so much about this collection here is that you don't just get the Atmos mixes, you get 3 different mixes per album. You get the original stereo mix, which, like I said, I'd never had before. So that was a revelation to hear what they originally sounded like. And then you also get the 2006 5.1 mixes, which, as we talk further, there are some cases where I may prefer them to the Atmos mixes. And then, of course, you get the new Atmos mixes. And what I like about this, and what I think is kind of like the crux of my point of view here, is that it doesn't matter which version you prefer. They're all here.
Exactly. And yeah.
That's what makes it such a great box set. So it's like, if I don't much care for the way that, let's just say Roadhouse Blues sounds in the Atmos mix, I can just flip over to the 5.1, listen to Roadhouse Blues, and then listen to the rest of Morrison Hotel and Atmos if I want to. And I really love that box set for that option. I also, as I kind of alluded to, I can't think of another band, and I'm sure there are examples like maybe Jimi Hendrix or somebody like that. I can't think of many other bands where their catalog has been overseen by one kind of sound engineer. And so the idea that Bruce Botnick did the original mixes, he did the remixes, he did the 5.1 mixes, he did the Atmos mixes, makes it something really special, I think. And I kind of like the way that it's not just their work, but also his that's presented here.
And he's someone who has a history of working with multi-channel formats. He did a bunch of quad mixes in the 70s, of course, including the Doors one, but he did like Earth, Wind, and Fire's Open Our Eyes. He mixed in quad, and also a Weather Report record.
Oh, is that right?
Which is available as a SAC from Dutton Vocalion. It's called Tail Spinnin'. Good record.
Go watch that video on Immersive Audio Album.
And
we'll put the thumbnail up.
More recently, he did the Atmos mix of Joni Mitchell's Blue, which is also out on a Blu-ray from Rhino. So he's definitely like a surround guy.
Yeah. And obviously the Joni Mitchell box set with the Atmos mixes and the quad mixes is another one of my favorites, and we've waxed poetic about that one as well. But I think that's a good segue to talk about these new mixes, and I think we're going to kind of center it around the new Atmos mixes. And, of course, we're talking about the 2022 mixes. But I think it would be interesting also to compare them a little bit to the 5.1 mixes, because as I said, there are definitely instances where I do prefer one over the other.
Well, I think that's kind of maybe the question for some people watching this video is like, maybe I've already got the perception box. I've already got the singles with the quad mix. Like, do I really need this other box? And yeah, I agree with you. I think I don't have a clear favorite between the three. There are some songs I like better on one version versus the other. I mean, the one thing that's not on here, obviously, are the 11 or 12 tracks that were mixed in quad. And I suspect the reason for that is maybe they want to do it as a quadio release.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would probably make sense, but it would have been nice to throw that in there.
Yeah, and I did get a chance to kind of listen through the quad mixes. And this kind of leads into our discussion of the first album. But the first album was recorded in 4-track. And the way that was grouped was the bass and drums on one track, the guitar and keyboards on another track, Jim's voice on a track, and then there was like an overdub track. So when it comes to mixing the first Doors album in multi-channel, your options are extremely limited. And what you end up with in the 5.1 and the Atmos mixes is kind of like an expanded stereo sound.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that is so important to the sound of the Doors record is they had this big plate reverb at Sunset Sound where it was recorded. And if you listen to a lot of the tracks, like they would sort of commit that to the tape. So if you were to isolate the center channel, which is basically just Jim Morrison singing, you would hear him with like this cavernous reverb. But I think they also added more reverb on top of that while they were mixing it when they did the final mix down from 4 tracks to 2. So in the surround mixes, basically they've taken that plate reverb and kind of expanded it out into the room behind you. Yeah. So since it is a very kind of wet sounding record, if you will, it does sound kind of bigger in than it would in stereo. But it's not the kind of mix where it sounds like you're standing in the center of the band, which some of the other albums have that kind of vibe.
Yeah, especially as you move forward toward LA Woman, it gets much more immersive.
But if you go back to the quad mixes, there's 3 tracks from the first album that were done in quad: "Light My Fire," "Take It As It Comes," and "Soul Kitchen" are the 3 that are on there. And it sounds like what they did is they took like the band tracks, like the drums and Raymond Zarek's like low keyboards, which are basically the bass on this album. And then the other track, which has, Krieger's guitar and the other keyboards, and just kind of move them out into the room. So if you listen to say "Light My Fire," like the keyboard solo sounds like it's coming from between the front left and rear left speaker.
Yes.
So it's kind of like the band is in the middle of the room and Morrison's voice is only in the front. Yeah. So it does sound a little bit more immersive than the newer mixes, which are just kind of like the band in front and just reverb in the back. Yeah. But it's still like not exactly what I would call, it's still compromised based on what the available elements are.
Right. But even the band kind of expressed that they were disappointed in the way that was recorded.
I mean, who knew it would be such an iconic record? And I mean, I think it would be an interesting candidate if they were to use like the stem separation technology. Who knows if maybe that'll be coming in a few years, if they could go in and try and sort of untangle the keyboard and guitar on the same track. And then you might have more elements you could place around the room. But at the time these were done, remember, this is 2025 now, but these mixes were done, 3 or 4 years ago. They didn't really have the advanced stem separation tech that has come out over the last, year or 2.
Yeah, but so what you end up with in both the 5.1 and the Atmos mixes is it's similar to the stereo panning where the drums and the bass are like all on the left side. And so that's something that you have to get used to. And I think there was a mono mix of the first Doors album.
It's pretty rare, but yeah, there is a mono LP. Yeah. I don't know if they've done a digital reissue of that. It would have been cool to put that in the set.
and the perfect opportunity to include it, because I would like to hear it. And I'm sure it's probably the best vintage mix of the album. But what I was going to say was I do think the Atmos mix sounds a little bit better because, than the 5.1 at least, because, what you're talking about with like that reverb coming out of like maybe the heights and the back speakers, it does make it seem a little bit more lively. And I feel like I can hear a lot more detail in the tracks than even in the original stereo mix. So I actually did enjoy listening to this particular Atmos mix quite a bit, even though it wasn't like, oh, the guitars are behind my head or, the heights the keyboard works dancing in the heights or something like that, or Jim's voice is all around me. No, it's not that kind of experience, but it does kind of expand it just ever so slightly, so that I can hear a lot more of the detail. And no, I really did enjoy listening to it. And it, to me, it's between this one and LA Woman. One of those two are my favorite. And I lean sort of towards LA Woman, but I guess we'll get to that as we go along.
You mean the Soft Parade isn't your favorite Doors record?
It's not, but I think it's underrated. And there's a couple of songs on there that I really enjoy, but we'll get to the Soft Parade momentarily.
As far as the first record, yeah, I think you summed it up well. The other thing I would say is I like the detail of having his voice in the center speaker.
Yeah, I do too.
Which is really cool. But I would say, yeah, like temper your expectations. It's not going to be a center of the band mix, but I think it's better than what we had previously.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. So do you want to talk about Strange Days?
Sure.
Now, this is a big difference because from here on out, I think all of the albums are 8-track.
Correct.
And as I was kind of reading into the background, so a lot of the first album, as well as LA Woman, is like done in 1 or 2 takes that are just kind of combined together, and you get this live feel. But starting with Strange Days, Paul Rothchild became like a drill sergeant, as they described him, and it would just like do hundreds and hundreds of takes. Like,
I think
by the time you get to Soft Parade.
You and I both watched it. There was a video interview that Rick Beato did with John Densmore and Robbie Krieger, who were the two surviving members of the Doors. And yeah, they said he was like a real taskmaster in the studio.
like 150 takes or something like that.
I think that's the tensions built to the point where they couldn't work with him anymore by the time they did LA Woman. And that's why Bruce Spotnick was the producer and the engineer on that record.
Yeah, and they basically recorded at home, but yeah. So the second Doors album, Strange Days, also recorded at Sunset Sound, right? It was the same studio.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so right from the start, like this is one of those albums that I think is significant because it was one of the first albums to use the Moog synthesizer, and like you hear that like in the opening, like I don't know if that was like Dancing in the Heights or if it was coming from behind. I know the 5.1 mix, the opening of the album kind of comes from behind you. And then in the Atmos mix, as you're listening to Strange Days, it's positioned more in the front. But you have Jim's processed voice kind of bubbling, which is really neat.
That weird echo they put on his voice is kind of like moving all around in both the 5.1 and the Atmos mixes.
I think that's being sent through like a synthesizer in a similar way. We were talking about Happy Family.
Yes.
When Gordon Haskell was going through the VSC3, it's kind of a very similar technique. And this was 1967, so a few years before that. But yeah, some incredible stuff on this one.
This was made in the same year as the first album. It's just like crazy. The pace. I mean, really, like people say this about the Beatles, but about the Doors too. Like it's a whole career in a very short span of time. Was it 67 to 71?
Mm-hmm.
Is the span of all 6 of these albums.
Yeah, and I think that there is some parallels there. Like, you could very easily compare like LA Woman to Abbey Road in terms of like feel. So let's just talk about some of the great Atmos tracks. So right from the start, like the one that jumps out at me is Horse Latitudes. Which is not necessarily a standout track otherwise, but it's just an opportunity for the band to be more experimental. And I think they said in that Beato interview that Sgt. Pepper landed right at the same time as this. They were recording this, so they were encouraged to experiment with things like, running tapes backward and new instruments and stuff like that.
I mean, I noticed kind of throughout the set that the songs that are Atmos highlights are kind of maybe not the ones you would expect.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my favorite tracks of this album is Love Me 2 Times, which is not like a surround spectacular by any means, because it's a pretty simple song. I mean, in the quad mix, basically it's everybody in front and just the drums in the back, which is a little weird, but you have to kind of give them credit for trying to make it more immersive. Yeah. Whereas in the newer mixes in 5.1 Atmos, it's just kind of like everybody in front, the 2 guitars, drums, and Jim's voice, and then just the reverb all around. But another highlight, and it is one of the most famous tracks in the album, is People Are Strange, I would say. I love the end when those extra vocals come in when it goes, "You're strange," and they come out of the top. It really
Yeah,
feels
it's
like
pretty
you're in the
sweet.
middle of it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've always loved that track.
And I was going to mention Moonlight Drive because there's one like really major track that we're getting to that was really exciting for me in Atmos. But Moonlight Drive, I think, is fun in any immersive mix. I mean, even the quad mix with the bottleneck slide jumping around in the back channels was pretty cool. But that's just one of my favorite Doors songs. Period.
Yeah, and in the Atmos mix, the slide is in the height speakers.
Yes. And but no, what we're really going for is when the music's over. That's the centerpiece of the album for me. And in terms of like Atmos mixing, I think that's the one where some of Jim's vocals are coming from the back at like one really particular moment, and there might be some like guitar overdubs or something that comes in.
One of the things I noticed about that track, and this goes for a lot of these mixes across all the albums, is that essentially kind of the way the setup is that the kind of main elements are in the front, the drums, the guitars.
Yeah.
And then there might be periods where the other speakers are like either silent or just have some reverb for long stretches. And then they'll suddenly like activate with overdubs.
Yeah.
And I think like for the most part, that mixing style works. Like it's about like 2 minutes into when the music's over, the crazy panning. I don't know if it's a guitar or a keyboard suddenly appears above you, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, right. It's like knocks your head off from the back. And no, I've said this before, but as much as I can dig my teeth into a lizard or a lark's tongue as an aspic or something like that that's really complex, sometimes I really enjoy stark Atmos mixes because it can allow those moments like to accentuate particular parts of the song, and that can be very, very effective. So yeah, this is one of the albums I was most excited about to hear again, and it was probably the one I played the most on streaming when I was first getting into Atmos. So yeah, there's a big leap in my opinion from the first album to this one. Musically that's arguable. Some people like the first album, some people like the second album better, but definitely in terms of the production and the mixing,
absolutely. Yeah.
There's a huge leap, and that just continues forward. Did you want to talk about Waiting for the Sun, or was there anything else that you want to mention about this one?
Oh, we could jump into Waiting for the Sun. Maybe someone in the comments would know this, but is there a story about why the song Waiting for the Sun is not on Waiting for the Sun?
Yeah, well, I'm sure there is a story behind that, because like there's stuff that was recorded for the first album that doesn't appear until later. Like a lot of the like some of Strange Days was written at the same time. Like I think Moonlight Drive famously was the first song that Jim presented to the band. And I think it's Indian Summer that ended up on Morrison Hotel was another track that was a leftover from the first album. And again, like if I'm saying something that's incorrect, I'm sure that somebody will be glad to correct us in the comments.
Like we were saying, all of these albums were released in a relatively condensed span of time. So it's not surprising that there would be like material left off one for the next one or something like that.
And a lot of the material came out of Jim's notebook that he wrote like when he was, very young, like probably not even 20 years old yet, just still a student and writing all these ideas down. And like that was a lot of the first 3 or so albums was from his notebook. But yeah, the song that really sticks out to me, and there's a couple, but Not to Touch the Earth is very active and very fun. And with stuff just kind of bubbling all around you. And, you get great opportunities with a song like Spanish Caravan with those guitars. And there's a sound on here that I'm positive is like a keyboard sound, but it sounds like a guitar. And the way that they're mixed and harmonized, it sounds like a double track guitar. But that blew my mind when I was sitting here listening. I'm like, you know what? I don't think that's a guitar at all. I think that's a keyboard.
Well, one of the things I like about Spanish Caravan is that it's sort of like there's two halves to it. There's the start with just like the acoustic guitars, which is in front. And then when it switches to like the keyboards, all of a sudden, then it's all around you. I think that's really effective. And I mean that keyboard sound in the back, like it's ghoulish. Is the way I would describe it. Like it's sort of freaky.
It's very dark. And again, like we were talking about, proto-progressive strangely, this song reminds me of what Tall would do, like within just a couple of years.
Well, it's funny. Like I agree with you that they are sort of proto prog, but at the same time, they don't have a lot of the hallmarks of the prog bands. Like
No,
I don't think there's any mellotron on any of these records.
I think there is.
Well, what I'm getting at is they didn't use it quite integrally as say like
No.
the Moody Blues or like King Crimson. Like I totally get the argument that the Moody Blues would be a prog band because
Oh yeah,
there isn't
definitely.
really when you put them against some of the early Crimson records, there isn't actually like there's a lot of similarity there.
Mm-hmm. Oh sure.
Yeah, but I would agree. Like especially the longer form tracks, like when the music's over, is that's prog.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And like LA Woman, the title track is kind of progressive to me. But yeah, this is a great album, and I mean I'm saying that about all of them so far, but you get the Unknown Soldier with
Yeah.
like the military sounds in the back,
The
kind of
military
coming at you.
it marches all around you, which I
Yeah,
thought
yeah, yeah,
was clever. I mean, you could say it's gimmicky, but I think it fits for that song.
yeah,
And it's done basically the same way in the Atmos mixes, except when the soldiers are loading their guns and Jim's like, load your guns, like when he shouts, that comes out of the top instead of the bottom on the Atmos mixes. I mean, one of the things I noticed, listening to these in 714 is that, because the albums were recorded on 8-track, it's kind of like you could tell he had to choose, like, do I want to use the heights or do I want to use the backs?
yeah,
Like there isn't really enough elements for both.
yeah,
So on some of the songs, it's kind of like you're getting just the fronts and then the heights. Like I think When the Music's Over is a good example of that. And then there's other ones where you're getting all the speakers at the bottom, all 7 of them, and then just ambience in the heights. And I think that's kind of the case for any 8-track record that's mixed in Atmos. Like if you listen to Steven Wilson's mix of like Van Morrison's Moon Dance, it's
mm-hmm.
very similar. There's some songs where there isn't really enough material to put in the heights.
yeah,
Well, like I said when I reviewed the best of, I think based on what the available elements are for each song, I'm happy with the choices he made and how to place things.
yeah. I would agree with that.
But one of the songs I thought was a miss on this track, I mean on this album, and I'm curious if you agree with me or not, is "Hello, I Love You." Because in the 5-1 mix and in the quad mix, the harmony vocals are in the back. I think that must be Ray singing.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
It's like a higher register harmony, and it's in the back on both mixes, and it sounds cool. And then in the Atmos mix, it's back in the front for some reason.
Yeah, that I was kind of bouncing back and forth, and we can kind of talk about like as a general comment. We should have mentioned this earlier, but the Atmos mixes are definitely a lot brighter sounding.
Yes.
Than the 5.1 mixes, and as you mentioned, a little bit bass deficient. And that can be, a good and bad thing, because with the brighter sound, you get more detail.
Definitely.
But then you're also lacking punch in some cases.
In the like slower songs, you get a lot more detail, like People Are Strange or like Spanish Caravan. Like those guitars at the beginning sound like they're really like in the room. But yeah, I agree on some of the like sort of harder hitting songs, like "Hello, I Love You" is a good example. Maybe like Roadhouse Blues we'll get to is another one. I agree, like a little more bass punch. And another thing that's going to, change people's, whether that will change the experience for people is that a lot of the bass is mixed to the center channel.
Mm-hmm.
So, in theory, bass management should account for that. But, whether you have a big or small center speaker, I mean, there's a lot mixed to the center channel on these mixes. You've got Jim's voice, the bass guitar, a lot of the solos, and the drums are not completely isolated in the center. Usually they're offset a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the drums are mono on all these albums. I think that was just kind of when you would record an 8-track, you get one channel for drums typically. Yeah. So you can hear the drums are mostly the center channel, but like maybe a little bit in the front right.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And occasionally the effects choices border on anachronistic for me. On certain tracks, and we're like one away from talking about Morrison Hotel, because I definitely have opinions on Roadhouse Blues. It's maybe my least favorite in terms of the Atmos mixing, but so we're going to talk about Soft Parade, unless there was something else you want to say about Waiting for the Sun.
I like the mix on Love Street. I think it's cool how there's the two different pianos, one in the back and one in the front. And when the doubled vocals come in, she has and knows it really fills up the whole room. So I think that's kind of it's a lesser known album track. I think it was a B-side, that song that has a nice, I'm surprised how good that sounds in surround on both the 5.1 and Atmos mixes. So kind of all that is to say, don't skip the album tracks on this because there's some good stuff.
Yeah.
And I almost forgot. Maybe the best mix on this album is the acapella track, "My Wild Love."
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
The hand claps and harmonies all around you.
Yeah, like that's really fun.
That's like never like a song I really thought about as a standout on this record, but it becomes sort of something else in Atmos and surround.
Oh yeah, it really comes to life. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that perhaps my favorite song on this album is 5-1. And that's a song that just lives in my head. Even when I'm not listening to the Doors for years and years, I still think about it regularly. And I definitely wanted a little bit more punch and aggression out of it on both mixes, both the 5.1 and Atmos. And when I was listening to it in Atmos, I thought, this is a little underwhelming. I switched to the 5.1 and I thought, ooh, I like the Atmos better. And so that's a little bit disappointing, but what I started doing is I started experimenting with turning up my subwoofer a little bit, and that helps. That definitely helps to give it a little extra oomph on the bottom end. But it still doesn't fix the problem that I have occasionally where some of the instruments sound a little bit thin, and I think that's a good segue into this one. So I don't think it's anybody's favorite Doors album, including the Doors themselves. I was reading that basically Jim Morrison was absent for a lot of the writing. So you see that like Robbie Krieger wrote a good bit of this album. But this ends up being, they're talking about Soft Parade. This ends up being one of the most interesting albums in Atmos because, of course, famously or infamously, they brought in the strings and brass. And a lot of people back then were like, ooh, you guys sold out because you're doing strings and brass arrangements. But it's like one of those things that, like, with the benefit of hindsight and knowing that LA Woman is coming, and knowing that Morrison Hotel is coming, I can listen to this one and I enjoyed it. Like, I think this is better than its reputation. I
thought it was telling that back when the Perception Box came out, there was an interview in like Sound and Vision or one of those magazines where they talked to Botnick and the surviving guys from the band about the surround mixes. And there was a section they were talking about the Soft Parade. And like, I think it was like Ray Manzarek was like, he was like, like when you listen to Soft Parade and surround, you could just turn the rear speakers off and then you could hear it without the orchestra. So I think that sums it up really. But like you said, because it has all these extra layers, it could be the most interesting one in surround because you've got all that brass behind you. And you can tell they recorded the brass like to multiple tracks.
Yes.
Like you listen to a song like, Tell All the People or Touch Me. You could hear like, the strings on one rear speaker, brass in the other. Yeah. And they're very cool to listen to in isolation if you have the ability to just listen to your back channels. Basically, you get the brass and like almost nothing else. Maybe some of the backing vocals, a little bit of reverb. But yeah, I would be curious to know if this is anybody's favorite Doors album. Tell us in the comments if the Soft Parade is your favorite Doors record.
Tell all the people.
Yes.
Yeah, but I actually like this one a lot. And like the opening of the album, you get a chance to like really hear. I don't know if all the speakers are activated, but most of them seem like they're activated when that kind of fanfare kicks in. Again, like I do find that sometimes the EQ choices maybe and some of the reverb choices end up being a little bit thin, especially at a higher volume. And so, I don't know necessarily how I feel about that. This is one that I definitely was reaching for my subwoofer volume to kind of give it a little bit punch, especially on a song like Touch Me, which does sound rather good, I thought, on the quad mix.
Yeah, you listen to the quad mix. I was just going to say the drums are like slamming you in the back.
Yeah, that song does sound rather good on the quad mix. But there's a couple of tunes I thought I would mention. Shaman's Blues is just like rolling in my head on repeat. I absolutely love that song. And just that that main kind of motif. And then I also think Wild Child was a lot of fun with the bottleneck slide thing going on. And again, I'm wearing my Captain Beefheart shirt because that song very much reminds me of an early Magic Band track. And you got to think the Magic Band's first album was 67. And this was what year was this one?
68.
68. So it's definitely like in the same time
69.
period,
I mean,
same place.
It was recorded 68, released 69.
So it's the same year as Trout Mask Replica. So it's not that far of a stretch to kind of compare the Magic Band as kind of like a weirder version of what you might hear in a song like Wild Child. But I love Wishful Sinful.
Yeah,
I think that's like a
for me, that's like aside from the two singles, that's like the one I would go to.
Yeah, it's like the crystal ship of the album. It's very very beautiful and kind of poetic. But I absolutely love the title track. And we were talking about prog. That might be the proggiest Doors track, because it takes you on a little journey. There's the spoken word bit, the Southern preacher thing. And did you notice that the reverb, Jim's voice was coming out of the height speakers?
Oh yeah, I mean it's interesting because in the 5-1 mix, like the mix approach is basically like the band in the front and like the horns in the back and some of the harmonies, and then in the Atmos mix, like it's sort of a little more variable. Like it keeps you guessing on some of the songs. The brass is in like the sides. Some of it's in the back. Sometimes it's kind of like in the sides with some elevation, so it kind of feels really big, like it's filling up the whole room. I mean, generally, like I was saying, the Atmos mixes kind of take the things that were in the back in 5-1 and kind of further parse those out.
Yeah.
But I would say that the content of the front speakers is pretty similar on both mixes. Like it's generally, drums, vocals, main guitars.
I definitely feel like and this is just again a general comment, that when the Atmos mixes really work, they expand these albums greatly.
Yes.
And again, like I'm on a 5.1.2 system. But what, the epiphany I had with my system was when I actually took the heights and put them up. And that changed everything. And just going back and forth from the 5.1 to the Atmos on this album, and especially on LA Woman, which we'll talk about very shortly, it's just night and day in terms of depth. So Morrison Hotel, at the time, kind of lauded as a return to form. And now I think it's kind of seen as the warm up for LA Woman. But a very good album. It to me, it's like, to me, it's like a minor classic. It's like a lot of these songs you're not going to necessarily find them on the best of the Doors, but they're still really strong. And of course, Roadhouse Blues, Peace Frog are FM radio staples. And Peace Frog especially is a weird radio tune. Especially that middle section is very, very strange.
Indian scattered highway, something, right?
Yeah. And that's another one that borders on the prog thing for me. And it's interesting also.
I have always loved Waiting for the Sun. I think that's a great track.
Yes. And it should have been on the Waiting for the Sun album,
just like
because it would have been one of the best songs.
The power of it when those keyboards come in.
Yeah. And it sounds great on this new mix. But just the one thing I was going to mention is that this album was 1970. And you have the Doors doing what Tall would do on Aqualung, where they separated side 1 and side 2. So side 1 is Hard Rock Cafe, side 2 is Morrison Hotel. That's similar to the Aqualung and the My God thing that Tall did, and got them accused of being progressive concept album makers. Yeah, so I have real issues with Roadhouse Blues on the Atmos mix. It's my least favorite Atmos mix on the set. And we were talking about the anachronistic production choices. There's some sort of weird slapback echo on the drums, and I do not care for it. And when I was listening to it, I was like, was that part of the original mix? Was that always there? And it gave me the opportunity to go back and hear the stereo mix. And I was shocked at how dry the original stereo mix of Morrison Hotel is. And I was also shocked that the harmonica part, which I think is a very distinctive part of that song, and hearing it on radio all these years, is almost buried on the original mix. So that was kind of a weird discovery. But this is one example, I think, where maybe the whole record, I prefer the 5.1 mix. Would you agree with that?
Well, one of the things I noticed comparing them, like I said, Waiting for the Sun is one of my favorite tracks. One of the things that's kind of something that's happening throughout the 5.1 mixes, there are a lot of moments where things like move around the room. Like we'll talk about LA Woman, like the Mr. Mojo.
Mr. Mojo.
Yeah. And in Waiting for the Sun, that crazy guitar solo middle like goes swirling all around the room in the 5.1 mix. It sounds super cool. And then in the Atmos mix, like it's just in the front and it's kind of boring. And I noticed like a lot of that throughout these Atmos mixes where they would kind of reverse some of the motion effects in the 5.1. My guess is like they kind of listened to it and they were like, like this is kind of gimmicky. Like maybe we went too far. We were mixing for 5.1, but I think a lot of it did work.
Yeah.
So that was one example where, I thought the 5.1 mix of Waiting for the Sun was more effective than the Atmos. Roadhouse Blues, I would agree with you. It's just another example of one of the harder rocking songs not having the punch that it needs.
Right.
The slapback thing, I'm not entirely sure about, but I think in the 5.1 mix, the harmonica is in the back too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another track that I thought was better in the 5.1 is Land Ho. Which I get kind of a weird song, but I always thought it was cool. The 5.1 is kind of like a vintage quad mix where it's sort of, different instrument in each corner, like guitar in one corner. And then in one of the back speakers, there's like this, is it like a violin or a fiddle? Something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that there's one song on this album that goes into like folk territory, and I was really surprised to hear that. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Land Ho is like kind of, I don't know how to describe it exactly. It's like maybe like a sea shanty.
I kept thinking of Sloop John B. For whatever reason, it kind of made me think of that.
But yeah, in the quad mix, it's kind of like different instrument in each corner. There are these guitar fills that come out of one back speaker and this violin in the other. And then in the Atmos mix, the lead guitar, which wasn't like the back right in 5.1, I think it's in the front height speakers at like half the volume it's supposed to be. So I don't know. There's a couple of like little weird things throughout the mixes of these albums. Oddly enough, it seems to affect this album more than the others.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I noticed that. This is the one that I think I was most frustrated with in Atmos, and I enjoyed all the other ones. But when I switched over to the 5.1, I was like, oh yeah, that's happening. And again, like I like almost every song on this album. Like maybe You Make Me Real is kind of the one that's like, it's just okay. Maggie McGill's, it's okay. It's not, to me, that one's not in the pantheon of great Doors closers, but it's got like the end when the music's over and Riders on the Storm, the soft parade. It's got 5-1, like all those to compete with. So it's like kind of not a fair comparison, but Queen of the Highway, I think, is a great track.
Another cool thing is in Peace Frog, like there's that second vocal where it's just him going like "She Came" that you can hear in the back in the surround mixes.
Yeah. So this is I think we both, just to sum up, I think we both agree that the 5.1 mix is probably the way to go with Morrison Hotel, but that's not the case for the next record, which I think we wrapped up talking about Morrison Hotel. But LA Woman, which is, I think this is, for many people, this is their best album. I think for myself,
it's definitely their best cover.
It's definitely their best cover.
Whenever you go to like a vintage record shop, it's always their most expensive record. And I think it's just because it's got that cool like cellophane cover.
I figured it was something to do with the mystique of it being their last record and
that too,
being so iconic and stuff. But my goodness, there's maybe like one or two of like the more like straight ahead blues songs that I don't love on this album, but songs like The Changeling, Love Her Madly, LA Woman, La America, The Wasp, The Riders on the Storm, like that to me is peak Doors. And interesting album. They pretty much recorded this in their rehearsal space. And like Jim famously sang this in his the doorway of the bathroom. To kind of get the reverb sound.
If you've seen the Oliver Stone Doors movie, with Val Kilmer, during the end credits, they do like sort of as the credits are rolling, they show a reenactment of them recording "L.A. Woman," like as the the text is running over it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's with the actors. It's not like a real recording, but it was like all live in the same room. And then I think Jim is like he's either upstairs or in another room, sort of just singing along with like a handheld mic.
Yeah.
So, and you can tell when you listen to it that the thing that was recorded like with the least fidelity was the vocals.
Yeah.
On this album, like the other instruments sound great. The vocals sound like a little bit harsh.
Yeah.
Maybe he was just like overloading the mic or something.
They said that he used the exact same mic that the Doors used live, which is really interesting. It was the exact same mic. So it was just what he was comfortable with singing. But yeah, let's talk about the multi-channel mixes. So to me, I think that this is by far the most immersive one. And I think you said before that Riders on the Storm is the ultimate Atmos demo track because you have the storm just kind of passing over you as that whole thing is playing out.
Well, I mean, for people who don't know the story, the thunder and rain effects were pulled from like a sound effects library by Jack Holzman, who was the head of Elektra Records, which was the Doors label. And think of all the other great artists they had on Elektra. Carly Simon, Jackson Browne. The list goes on and on. They had a great roster in the 70s. And supposedly, from what I've read online, the sound effects Thunder and Rain track is mono.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what they did to make it sound so immersive in the surroundings.
Yeah, that's interesting.
If you add reverb to it, that just kind of naturally spreads it out. But in the Atmos mix, there is a separation. Like you can hear like the rain is behind you and then the thunder is above you moving around.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they did something to like try to demix it or separate the parts. Whatever they did, it's more effective in the Atmos mix than in any of the other versions.
I would agree with that. And this song is by far the worst version is the quad mix.
Well, I wonder if just the rear channels were like mastered too loud or something on that new
pretty aggressive
on that Rhino Blu-ray. But I mean the difference like in all the other quad mixes, the drums are in the back too, along with the thunder and rain.
Yeah.
And that whisper vocal is really cranked.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah, but what I was going to mention was I thought it was fascinating, and we're kind of bouncing around different topics here, but that interview that Beato did with Robbie Krieger and John Densmore, when they were talking about how they had the rain effects, that was like one track, and then they had the thunder, and it becomes like piece of electronic music at this point because they were running the rain sounds, and they could trigger the thunder when they wanted a dramatic effect. So it's like if somebody played like a really amazing solo, you just put that little thunder effect in there just to give it a little bit of, Mother Nature's special effects sort of thing.
The thunder hits right before it switches from, Ray's solo into Robbie, right? Or is it
right.
There's kind of these two long solos and then they're broken up by the thunder.
Yeah, but it feels right. That's the thing.
In the Atmos mix, like the thunder and rain are cranked up relative to the original. Like they're hotter in the mix, but I wouldn't say like distractingly so. Like it's done well.
Yeah, and if I could just change one thing, when Manzarek plays the arpeggio, like the famous, I would have loved to hear that pan across the top speakers. Like that should have.
That would have been cool. And then in the Atmos mix, there's a lot of there's some vocal stuff that was mixed out of the original. Like towards the end, like there's a couple like Jim sort of yelps that come out of the height speakers. There's a part where there's finger snaps.
The snaps.
Or heights that was not in the original. And of course, it has that whole kind of extended intro where you're kind of like in the control room listening.
Yeah. Now you and I have a different opinion on this, so we should talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, the original intro is great where it just sort of fades up from silence and it feels like you're in the middle of the storm. And I suspect the reason why they added that stuff in is because Riders on the Storm was released as an Atmos single before the rest of the discography. This was really early in sort of the Atmos music thing. Like I want to say mid 2020, that track came on Tidal. So I think it's fine to have like that extra stuff for it being released as a single, but I was kind of hoping that for the album version, they would put back the original intro. And I know in the fan community, it's generated some controversy. Some people like the original intro, some people like the new one. But I mean, if you want to hear it in surround and you want to hear the original intro, you've got the 5.1 mix and the quad mix. So
It's there. Yeah.
yeah.
But I like it because I was reading that Riders on the Storm was the last thing that the quartet Doors did together. It's Jim's last recording with the band. So he makes this, Jim has this like very legendary personality. Like he's this dark poet and scary guy. But you learn more about him, and he was very funny.
And he was like this young guy. He was 27, right?
He was like a goofball. And one of the things that he said, to say, it's take 10, guys. Hey, this is serious. It'll never be take 10 again. And that's like such a throwaway, funny line that has a lot more weight when you realize that was the last thing they did together. Now, who knows? Did they do take 11? I couldn't tell you, but it's interesting either way.
Now, supposedly, Riders on the Storm was the track that like they had a real split with Rothschild over. He was like, you guys can't record this. Like, this is lounge music or something. It ended up being one of their greatest tracks, I think.
Yeah, he was very wrong about that. But yeah, let's talk about LA Woman, the title track. So there's definitely a moment in this that's better in the 5.1 mix.
Well, I assume the moment you're talking about is the Mr. Mojo Horizon.
Yeah.
Which it goes all around the room.
Yeah.
It's a little bit gimmicky, but it's fun. Now, I think it's worth mentioning, and I said this in the other video where we briefly talked about this set, which is that LA Woman was mixed to 5.1 before the rest of the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a standalone DVD audio of LA Woman that came out a few years before the Perception box in 2006. And I don't think they really did anything to revise the mix in the Perception set. It's the same. But that mix was done in it may have been done 1999. It was done very early in the whole 5.1 thing. So I think that's why LA Woman, more so than the other albums, has more of the panning around the room. In L'America, the guitar part continuously goes around the room, which I thought was cool. And then in the Atmos mix, they sort of toned some of that down. Now, what I was thinking, if it were up to me, I would have had the Mr. Mojo Horizon actually rising. You could have had it slowly go to the height speakers. That would have been cool.
Yep.
But, oh well.
There's also a pretty basic song like Cars Hiss By My Window, which is that the one that's got the walking?
Yeah, I thought
walking around.
I thought that was like a surprise highlight. Again, that was never a track I really paid that much attention to, but it's it's got the guitar and keys and the side speakers right next to you, and then there's the walking around the room. Now, another thing I think that was a bit controversial is there's a section in Cars Hiss By My Window where there's some vocals that were added back in that were mixed off the original, like a sort of just bit of Jim vamping, that kind of thing. As far as the other tracks go, another good example is in the beginning of LA Woman. It's got that extended intro in the 5.1 and Atmos mixes.
Yeah, which I've never heard it any other way. So because the version that I grew up on was the remix from 2006, which is what the 5.1 mix comes from, and then now the Atmos version. So I'd be curious because I didn't really spend a whole lot of time with the original mixes because I didn't think we'd be talking about them, but I would be curious to go back and listen to the original mix of this album because I think of all of them, this had the best sound originally and best mix because I think this is the only one that the drums weren't mixed all the way to one side. Just when I was kind of spot checking it, I noticed that the drums were kind of more in the center and it had more of a modern sound to it, even originally.
I mean, it makes sense because it was the last one, right?
Yeah.
The one track for me that I thought was that I didn't like in the Atmos mix is Lover Madly because the vocals were just too low.
Okay, interesting.
What happened there? Somebody forgot to push up a fader or something. So for that track, I would go for either the 5.1 or the quad mix.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I didn't catch that, but at the same time, I was bouncing back and forth between the 5.1 and the Atmos mix.
There's also
inevitably
there's some fun stuff with the drum fills moving around the room in the 5.1. That break up each verse.
Yeah, I wonder if the drums were recorded differently on this album. If they were able to accomplish more separation, or if that was just a case of moving the mono track, panning it around.
Another example of the panning being toned down is in L'America. In the 5.1 mix, the guitar part continuously rotates through the whole song. And I think in the Atmos mix, it moves around the heights just at the beginning, and then it kind of settles in place for the rest of the song.
Yeah.
So that one I could kind of see why they changed it. But yeah, otherwise I agree with you. I think it's the most effective of the Atmos mixes.
Yeah. Yeah. And adding the height speakers just makes huge difference in terms of the dimension of the sound. I guess this comes down to, do we recommend this box set? And I think we do.
Yeah. I mean, certainly if you don't have any door surround stuff, if you don't have the perception box, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Because it's cheaper than the perception boxes to buy used.
Yeah.
You know, when I got my perception box used, maybe, I don't know, like 2015, 2016, it was like $100. And this is $80 and it has more content.
Yeah, and we are heading into the holiday season, so I'm guessing that Rhino Records is going to be running some deals, like Black Friday's coming up, Christmas, all that stuff. They're definitely going to be running some sort of like 15% off or some sort of code. So yeah, if you love the Doors, and especially if you're like me, you didn't own any, I think this is an essential purchase. I learned a lot about this band. Like this is a band that I listened to 10 or 15 years ago, just kind of put aside, thought, hey, you know what? I'm okay with the hits. I can just listen to the best of. But I'll be honest with you, I don't agree with that anymore. Like going back and hearing all 6 of these albums, and I listened to them in order. I'm definitely glad to have these back in my life. And I would recommend this set just on the basis that, again, kind of wrapping back to what we said at the beginning, if you prefer the 5.1 mix, if you prefer the Atmos mix, if you prefer the original mix, it doesn't matter. They're all here. The only thing that's missing is the quad mixes, which is kind of a detriment. And, you know, this kind of loops back to the quad discussion. You do get Who Do You Love?
From Absolutely Live.
From Absolutely Live. And it would have been nice if they would have included Absolutely Live, because, like, look at the Joni set. We got Miles of Isles in the Joni set.
Maybe they're saving Absolutely Live for one of these like standalone Blu-rays or something.
I'd buy it. I used to look at that album in the store and like back before I had an income and just like, man, I wish I could get this, but it's like too expensive. So, you know, I would love to just have a copy of that album because I've never heard it. And like I said, it would have been nice to include the extras. I think that Celebration of the Lizard is an important oversight, but of course you get Celebration of the Lizard on Absolutely Live. So again, like that would be like going forward, you know, usually we say, what would we like to see next? That's the obvious choice is Absolutely Live. Now there are 2 Jimless Doors albums.
That's
Have
right.
you ever heard them?
Other Voices is one of them. And I forgot what the other one's called.
Yeah.
American Prayer, maybe.
That's a Jim Poetry album. And I don't think there would be much options for like multi-channel, but I could be wrong about that.
No, I have never heard the Jimless ones.
Yeah. So again, like it would have been nice to include those just because, you know, why not? Why not just do a complete box set? But overall, I'm very happy with it and I do recommend it. I like the packaging style. I mean, the one kind of gripe I have is that they did overstuff the package just a little bit. So that when mine arrived, the spine of LA Woman was like shifted and bent a little bit. So I had to fix that. But yeah, I wish that they would have widened the box just a little bit. But other than that, you know, maybe my one other gripe is it would have been nice to have a book, you know, some sort of literature reading material about the band. But like you said, there is so much about this band online. There's documentaries, there's the classic albums that you can watch. So it's not like we're starved for information on the Doors. I'm just saying, like, it would have been nice to complete this package.
But at the same time, you know, how often do you see a band's whole discography in surround in one set?
Well, almost. almost the whole discography.
I mean, the closest example I could think of is like the Talking Heads brick. Is kind of the only other time that it's happened. I guess maybe the Chicago Quadio, but even that's not really their whole discography. Yeah. It's just kind of the Terry Kath years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I was surprised to find, you know, like I said, I was thinking like I had this almost all the songs I want to hear on here. So I thought. But then I went through, you know, the mixes on streaming before this came out, and I thought, like, you know what? There's a lot of stuff missing from that expanded best of that I would like to be able to own the Atmos mixes of. So I'm glad they decided to do this set.
Yeah, I am as well. So what if people want to tell Immersive Audio Album what their favorite Atmos mixes were this year? How is that for a segue? How do people let you know what their favorite Atmos mixes of the year are?
Yes. So if you followed the site before, we do this promotion around this time of year every year that we call the Listener's Choice Awards, where we just put it up to a vote, what people thought that their favorite, immersive mix of the year was. And it follows the same guidelines as the Grammys. So like basically between August of last year and August of this year. So if you go on the site, I've put like a very extensive list of it's something like 50 or 60 titles that fit within that time frame. And there's different categories for either streaming or download, and also, for either physical or download and streaming. So you could vote in either one or both if you choose. And I think it's just kind of a fun way to, get it out there, like what fans thought the best immersive release of the year. Because I know people often disagree with what the Grammys choose for their immersive audio category. So, obviously it doesn't cost you anything. So head over there and cast your vote.
Terrific. And if you've been watching this video and you've enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to both of our channels. So the way that this works is we've started officially collaborating because YouTube offers this feature now. And so basically, if you go to subscribe to my channel, that little subscription logo there, if you click on that, it'll also pull up Jonathan's Immersive Audio Album channel. So make sure you're subscribed to both of us because that's very important. Also, don't forget to let us know in the comments, hey, what's your favorite Doors album? What's your favorite Atmos mix of a Doors album? Are you going to pick this up? Are you excited to? Whatever is on your mind. Let us know. What did we get wrong? Tell us what we're wrong about. We'd love to know. And don't forget also to like the video. That's super important algorithmically. We got to please the robots. They're here to stay. Nothing we can do about it. But until then, Jonathan, it's been a blast as always. And I look forward to talking about new releases in December with you very soon. I'm looking forward to talking some Jimi Hendrix. Are you up for that?
Totally. I was pretty blown away by the Atmos mix of Axis Bold as Love.
Great. See, I haven't listened to it much. I just played it one time, but because I've been in Doors land. But it's very easy to go from Doors land to Hendrixville because they're kind of, to me, very related artists, at least at the time.
Sometimes we're leaping from one completely unrelated thing to another, like you're going from King Crimson to like Tears for Fears. That's a bit of whiplash there.
It's good that you mentioned Tears for Fears because I'm my copy of Songs from the Big Chair is in Chicago at the moment, so I'm guessing probably tomorrow. So yeah, if you want to hear our discussion about releases in December, our review of the Jimi Hendrix Atmos mixes, so that's Atmos Bold as Love, Axis Bold as Love,
Electric
Ladyland, and then there's also the live set, which I picked up. So we're going to be talking about those very soon. And we're going to be talking about Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair. What else? Upcoming releases in 2026. That might be a video we do shortly.
That'll be a fun discussion.
That'll be a fun discussion. We're also going to maybe talk about the Yes albums as a kind of precursor to Topographic Oceans, which is coming out soon. So again, make sure you don't miss any of that. The only way to keep track of mine and Jonathan's activity is by subscribing to our channels. So again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.
See you.